My neighbor across the street has purchased an enormous, rotating, blow-up Christmas snowball. It squeaks rather loudly at night, and I think of it as sort of a sign of the silliness we are doing to survive in these pandemic times. My street has become just a home place for all of these giant blow-up activities that are all over the street. Now, mind you, I notice the squeak most each night when I go outside to check on what I refer to as the dove butts. You might wonder what this is. These are doves, actually. They're attached to the doves, 3 in total, who take turns now roosting on the branch under which I park my car each night. And these doves leave calling cards for me, a lot of them, every night. So I have taken to doing 2 things. I have taken to spreading a towel over my car every night, and I've taken to going outside in the dark of the night to look up in the trees and see which of the dove butts are with me that night. It might be the single mourning dove or the pair of white doves, because they seem to alternate a little bit. My neighbor with his snow globe is clearly stressed. Now me, watching and monitoring avian posteriors, that's just, perfectly fine. So, on my way home from our charming, distanced, masked, and very joyous craft fair and the kickoff to our Breath and Spirit retreat yesterday, I drove down Contra Costa Boulevard in Pleasant Hill near the Target, which is near my house. And it was packed in that parking lot. There were maybe a few spaces left that were testimony to the fact that this is not a normal year, but there were many, many, many spaces, which proves to us once again that denial is not just a river in Egypt, as they say, or to put it another way, this is why we can't have nice things or days without shelter. Only the presence of a very few spaces attested to the fact that we really are in a different time and that we need to recognize that. But it's 2020, we're in this pandemic, and we need to pay attention. It is hard to pay attention, and it becomes harder every week that this pandemic goes on. Psychic numbing is a term that refers to our inability to grasp the enormity of what is happening around us. With the death of my 4th beloved colleague last Saturday, I began to really feel that coming over me. There's an anger, an exhaustion, a disbelief. And somewhere in the middle of all that, we also heard that 250,000 Americans had died of COVID-19, and then we got the message that a new shelter-in-place was coming, which of course makes sense, but does not make us happy. And then we got news on Friday, after parts of our service were even taped, that it is here, starting tonight. Another lockdown, this time in the holiday season, and there really was only one title to which I could change this sermon this week, and that is, Bah Humbug. Where do we look for guidance to get through these holidays, which will be like no other that we remember? I started to think about a couple weeks ago that perhaps wartime holidays would actually offer us some counsel or some examples, something we could learn from. After all, we are in a war against contagion and ignorance and denial. Because of rationing and support the war efforts, holidays during war tend to emphasize quality time with other people, not so much, de-emphasize gift-giving, and emphasize innovation of doing what you can with what you have rather than the things you usually have, which perhaps you can't have. For example, in a wartime, not having sugar. That was hard to come by. In our time, not having the ability to go and do the things we would normally do. The glaring difference, of course, between those times and this time is the emphasis on spending time with those we loved, something that this particular form of distress does not allow us to do. And that is very difficult for us. So all of that means that we're going to need to be very attentive and very mindful about how we go in and through these holidays that are around us right now. Especially important in wartime holidays was the idea that you could choose something. That's what they reminded us, that some people chose to be despairing, but other people chose hope. And historian Mary Elizabeth Cox reminds us that while we like to tell this story, and I'm sure most of us have heard it in some apocryphal version or not, but the story of the Christmas truce of 1914, when troops on both sides, and this is largely factual, laid down their arms for the holiday and did things like exchange the bodies of the dead and allow each other to take a break, exchange food. We do not tell as often the darker tale of 1918. And that was the year that, though the armistice had been signed, European nations refused to allow food to come through the blockade to the starving German people because of their anger about Germany's part in the aggressions that had started the World War and killed so many. It was justifiable anger, and yet, as a result, countless thousands of Germans starved that winter and during those holidays. And as Cox said, the lesson is a simple one. There are no better angels standing by to overcome us at Christmas or any other time. We choose every day. If the Christmas 1914 story reminds us, she says, about the importance of choosing to see past our momentary hatreds, the Christmas 1918 story reminds us of how hard that can actually be, especially when it requires forgiveness of all the virtues, one of the most beautiful to receive and the most difficult to offer, but perhaps the most important in this world of ours. And those words, I believe, have only become truer since she wrote them about this time last year. So how are we to survive and even to thrive in this 2020 holiday season? Well, I'm going to give you 12 ideas that I've spent some time thinking about. You can offer others to us all, and that will be good. But in the spirit of the 12 days of Christmas, we'll offer 12. First, acknowledge that you are a little numb. I'm a little numb, we're all a little numb, and work to be present for even small moments of joy. We cannot grapple with the enormity of what's been lost in these last years, human life at levels that we can't comprehend, ways of life that we now know will be altered in the future, months of our lives spent in ways we never would have chosen to spend them. Most of us are experiencing the holidays with some degree of disconnection now, and those who already find the holidays hard or who have been in forced isolation for many months may find this particularly hard now. So take a moment on this day when we're about to see those limited freedoms that we have been enjoying shut down a little bit around us. Take a moment to be present to something physical, pleasurable, the smell of your tea, the feel of a beloved animal or person, the texture of a comfortable piece of clothing, the ridges of a shell from a trip to the beach in different times. Try to be present to this time, because we need to not just be numb. 2, understand the weight of sorrow. Busyness in the holidays is a tried and true way to navigate through all of this, especially again for those who associate it with some loss or difficulty. Busyness is a little harder to come by this year. Those who are still grappling with having lost a loved one in 2020 may particularly be feeling this. Because they come once a year, the holidays are more likely to be sticky for memories than other times, because if we have normal days, eventually those losses get incorporated into the fabric of life. But holidays are different. It takes a lot longer to get through that many days. So say the names of the people you wish were there when you light the menorah this week. Allow yourself the tissues when you take out the ornaments. Talk to a friend when things feel hard. Understand that weight of sorrow. 3, be very intentional and mindful. When our minds are a little numb and a little shocked, deaths, new shelter orders, plans changing again, this can make it easy for us to make silly mistakes. We might step off a curb because we might not be paying attention. We might step off a curb because we're wearing a mask, because now we have to do that everywhere. We might drop something. We might not pay attention to something we're cooking and burn it. Ask me how I know this. Yes. 4, reach out and help someone else. From Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, we see what happens when we don't acknowledge our losses. Oh, Dickens writes, he was a tight-fisted, hand at the grindstone Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster. Well, while we may now have a new term to talk about those really solitary days, we'll just tell each other we're just having an oyster day. We don't have to be Scrooge, and we can still engage in acts of service to others. When offered, we can be in that reciprocal spirit of generosity, which means being open to people doing things for you as well, because that is a form of generosity. And if you're someone who hates these winter holidays, and is feeling sort of vindictive glee with all of this now that everyone else knows how you feel, well, honor us all, and please be kind. 5, keep a sense of perspective. Even if all goes reasonably well, this Christmas of 2020 will be like no other. This strange and disconnected way in which we must experience these holidays doesn't mean anything except that that's the strange and disconnected way we're going to experience this year. It doesn't mean this is the last time that you will ever see the kids at Christmas, or that you've lost your connection with God if you don't feel up to making latkes this year, especially if you're experiencing your first holiday with a loss. Just go easy on yourself. 6, connect as you can. Virtual gatherings are not the same. Let's take the both and. That is true, and it is also true that they still bring the connection that we can have during this virus. Considering giving up positions such as, I don't do virtual for 30 days. I know that's actually what you're supposed to do around a different holiday, Lent, but let's just do it for the winter holidays this one time, just because it's 2020. So call people. What if we all started writing holiday cards this year again? Because it would mean a lot to have them. Maybe you have a virtual Christmas tree decorating Zoom. Maybe you have 3 little trees instead of the big one in your family room. Maybe you have a virtual New Year's Eve, because we certainly won't be sorry to see this year go. 7, I think this one is very important. Let go of grievances. We simply don't have enough energy left at the end of this year to put that much energy into hating. We don't need to be vengeful or angry just because we can't get what we want, or because we're frustrated with life and the people that we're seeing maybe too much around us. Forgiveness and letting go of resentments can make the unbearable a little bit more bearable. 8, cultivate a sense of awe. Remind yourself that there are things of beauty around you, and take the time to notice them. 9, remember the big stuff. Light a candle maybe every night for those who are filling our ICUs and triggering this next shelter-in-place level. Those who face holidays without loved ones in perpetuity. Make donations to help those who don't have shelter as we go into this shelter. Go out and look at the stars, and remember that this too will pass. 10, pursue moments of laughter and joy with gusto, even if it's laughing at the squeaky giant blow-up snow globe in your neighbor's yard, or the practice of looking for dove butts around midnight. Sometimes you can also share that by sending in pictures of what you're doing, you yourself, a picture of you with what you're doing, not just the thing, to share with your church community so that we can see one another's faces over these next weeks, for that will be a great gift for us all. And I also have found there's a lot of joy in singing. I had an interesting moment, which you saw actually on the invocation, when I realized I have not sung out loud at all since we came back to doing services in this sanctuary, because here I cannot sing for safety reasons for those who are here as well. So I actually had stopped singing, and it was funny to realize that, and then it made me realize how much I wanted to sing some more. It is not, Mark Tuning was nodding at me, too late to join the choir for the holidays. So go ahead and be glad and help us in this time. 11, be grateful and celebrate what you can. Be grateful and celebrate what you can. Each of us is alive to hear these words. Roses actually bloom here in the wintertime, and we can, each day, light one candle. And 12, rest and relax and find ways to have fun and joy. These winter times are for us as biological creatures a time when we are supposed to go fallow and rest a little bit more than we do in other times of the year. Will these winter holidays be the ones that we want? I would say the facts are probably stacked against them being exactly what we want. Can these winter holidays be times of meaning and joy? Will they be ones that we look back at and remember? Absolutely. The way that some look back and remember those wartime Christmases, those wartime holidays, and that they stand out in their minds. Can we remember in this season that we are creative and innovative and faithful to that spirit that says a new possibility of hope and love are coming? I know that we are. I suspect that we will. So yes, bah humbug, and God bless you, everyone.